this is Mrs. Sherwood, just explaining how flat and round characters help move the plot along with their different dynamic or flat or round or static status. So, as we talked about in class, flat characters do not change. They are side characters. They contain about 1 or 2 character traits. And like I said before, they do not change. So our example was Mr. Filch from Harry Potter. And throughout the entire 7-book series, he really doesn't change. He maintains a consistent hatred for students breaking the rules. He likes to keep things in order. And he is obsessed with his cat. When it comes to round characters, we see them always encountering conflict. The characters is not predictable, making them more realistic and relatable. And finally, they change constantly, both inward and outwardly, and that makes them more believable. With Neville Longbottom, we see him as a huge dynamic character. The change happens internally. He started off as being a scared individual and wasn't really one to stand up for himself, but as the series progresses, we see that he ends up being the one to defeat Voldemort, which is a huge growth for him, and he is dynamic. We can use FAST to help us explain when a character is dynamic, and these dynamic characters really start to show themselves in the thick of things, or the climax. That's like the turning point of the story. And last but not least, we have our static character, Mrs. McGonigle. She stays the same throughout the entire book series. She kind of serves as the moral compass for Harry Potter and his friends, keeping them in line and making sure they never go over to the dark side. She is a constant, and if you think about science, where you have a controlled variable, that is Professor McGonigle to a T. So let's talk about how all of these characters and different types of characters help move the plot along. So some characters are transitional characters and others are big moment characters. So Neville and Harry, they're big moment characters. They typically are the center of any big action scenes. So in the exposition, when we're learning about these main characters, and the climax, when things are starting to get heated and we just really need to figure out everything. And then in the conclusion or the resolution, that's when everything ties down. We learn the theme of the story or the lesson of the story. And so the main characters or the dynamic characters or the round characters, those will all change, and we'll find out those changes in the climax and the conclusion. And then for the transitional characters, that's Mr. Filch and Professor McGonigle. And what I mean by transitional is it helps move the story along with whatever it is they say. So if the narrator is describing something that Mr. Filch talked about, he's probably yelling at some kids. That's just transitioning the scene. It's a filler scene to help move the story along. And that's about it. So if you have any questions, please feel free to Edmodo or email me. But we really want to make sure we take notice that there are several different types of characters, static, dynamic, flat, and round. Thanks so much for paying attention, and I will see you in class.